After trading their young point guard in Josh Giddy for Alex Caruso this past summer, they've now locked him into a long-term extension that's going to keep him in OKC for at least the next 4 years. We're going to talk about it all, plus the Mo Wagner injury and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
That's funny as hell. What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. We got Big Kev, myself, Hayes, in the building today. And Kev, Alex Caruso has signed a 4-year, $81 million extension with the OKC Thunder. Now, the reason why I do want to talk about this, and I do think this is important, because this is where you have to talk about have the conversation about value, right? Because a lot of people over the course since Alex Caruso been there have looked at like his shooting numbers and things like that, and have tried to make it seem like maybe this wasn't a good trade for the OKC Thunder, but he's been hugely important to their defensive identity. He's been such a good player for them. And while, yeah, he's shooting in like the 20% range right now from three-point range, I would not be surprised at all if in the playoffs Alex Caruso turns it on from three-point range. But even if he doesn't, he's been such an important factor of just that disruptive defense that the OKC Thunder can play so consistently. How do you feel about the deal?
I mean, you got to look no further than the Chicago Bulls. Look at the impact of Alex Caruso's defense for the Chicago Bulls. He was there for the last 2.5 seasons, and he's now on Oklahoma City. The Chicago Bulls are giving up, well, I'm not sure if it's the same now, but as of last week, they were giving up the second most points in the NBA behind the Washington Wizards. Alex Caruso's value cannot be quantified by a stat sheet. It just can't be. You can't just look at, how many points did he score and expect that to represent everything that Alex Caruso brings to the table. We're talking about deflections. We're talking about basically causing people not to be able to go jump for alley-oops, like by keeping them on the ground. It's so many different things that man does that we know that's why he's first team, second team, all defense. It's just the reality of it. When you see a person like Alex Caruso, you think, not necessarily Drew Holiday, but Drew Holiday, if that makes sense. Drew Holiday is a much more polished offensive player, but on the Boston Celtics, he doesn't have to do those things. So what he does is basically what Alex Caruso does. He goes out there and he muddies things up. He might score 10, he might score 15, he might not score nothing, but he's locking down very important players for the opposite team, for the opposing team. I'm not mad at this extension for Alex Caruso. Shout out to him for climbing all the way from the G League to an $80 million contract. Shout out to him for real.
I mean, I know there's been other ones, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is Alex Caruso the biggest success story coming out the G League? Can you think of one big? I know there's been players that have had runs or players that have come in the NBA, played solidly for a few years, but like Alex Caruso not only went through the G League, he's become an NBA champion already. He was not like he was just on the end of the bench. He was an important part of that. Multiple all defensive teams, and now he has a chance to win another one. He's gotten paid. He's gotten a huge contract now on top of that. Like,
No,
I think he probably is.
You're not wrong. I mean, like, I'm sure people like, did Isaiah Thomas play in the G League? Maybe. I don't know. But maybe him.
Yeah, but Isaiah Thomas's run, when you go back and look at it, it was really short.
Yeah, it was, and just like him. But it is what it is. I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at what you just said. I think Alex Caruso could be the best success story. Now we'll see how some of these G League Ignite players turn out over the next 10 years or so.
Look at that's a little bit different, just because they did that instead of college. So I don't.
Yeah. But again, it's still the same. Caveat, right? The most successful G League player.
I mean it by the sense of a player that had to come through the G League, like they went through G League, but then still went into the draft. I kind of mean like they had to go through the G League to make the NBA.
No, you're right. Like Seth Curry, no.
Yeah.
It got to be Alex Caruso. Mm-hmm. He's got first team All NBA defense, like on his resume, championship on his resume. Highly sought after. The teams wanted to give up first round draft picks for him, and the Bulls is like, "No, we'll just let you have him." Exactly. So, like, it is what it is. I'm loving what I'm seeing, and I think OKC's commitment to defense could start to signal a change in the NBA as a whole in terms of teams deciding to focus on defense more than offense, because that's really been the issue over the last couple of seasons for fans, at least in terms of the viewership going down and so on and so forth. You got teams that's buying into defense. I like to see it for real, for real.
Yeah, and that's an important part of all this too. Is that for a league that like I think it's fans that don't really value um defense. I think that like you're seeing NBA teams valued players that can play defense. Like it's starting to improve, and it has been improving for a little while now. And I think that it's the fans that still look at it and they're like, fans just take defense so for granted. And it's like, show me a team that's won a title that didn't have a player that had it turn into a lockdown defender for them at points in that championship run or in that series. You just don't.
Yeah, even
Defense
if
is
you
still a huge important part of being able to win a title in this league.
even if you look at the Boston Celtics from last year, um, we know that they were an offensive juggernaut. They shot 100 threes a game, so on and so forth. But look at how much they outscored their opponents by
Mm-hmm.
last season. You had them averaging 125 plus, but the teams that they played were averaging 112,
Yeah.
111. So like their point differential was part of their defensive approach. Jaylen Brown, Derek White, you can't overlook players like that. And of course, Drew Holiday. There's a reason why they went and got Drew Holiday, and it led to them getting a championship.
Yeah.
So offense is fun to see, but defense wins games. It never changes.
Yep, and that's been the same forever, and it's not going to change. It is what it is. There. Let me ask you this: when it comes down to it as well, Kev, when you're looking at this move, of course, when it comes to the OKC Thunder, do you think that does this make the Josh Giddy trade even more of a loss for the Chicago Bulls?
It all depends on how Josh Giddy plays once he comes back from injury and tries to put on a he's on an interview. He's on a season long interview for the Chicago
Mm-hmm.
Bulls on whether or not they're going to extend him or not. The only way that this would be a loss for the Bulls is if they don't re-sign Josh Giddy. That's just the reality of it. Um, we know what Alex Caruso brings to the table defensively, but we know what Giddy brings to the table for the Chicago Bulls, at least in terms of running an offense. And that's what they're
Mm-hmm.
looking for, somebody that can go and get the fast break going, increase the pace, and give the Bulls credit. They have increased pace this season. It might not be translating to wins every single night, but they have gotten a lot better than they have been over the last 3 seasons. Now, that's addition by subtraction as well, as far as DeRozan being out of there. He slows down the pace a lot. But Giddy plays a big role in getting the offense going when he's out there on the court. So hopefully he comes back from this ankle sprain and proves that he's a good enough trade piece for Alex Caruso.
Yeah, I mean, I know the Bulls are hoping that they're going to be able to, as I'm wearing my Bulls shirt across my chest now. I know that they hope that he will, but I mean, I think everybody thought at that time that people were surprised that the Bulls gave up Alex Caruso for what they did. And I don't know if you saw the report that came out just a couple of days ago. I know this was just yesterday, Kev, of J.K. Fisher saying that the Sacramento Kings offered the 13th pick. The Golden State Warriors offered 2 firsts and Moses Moody. It just gets, every time we find out more about how this trade happened, it just gets worse and worse for the Chicago Bulls, man.
Well, this is NBA Central, so I'm not about to crash out on the Chicago Bulls over here. But it's I, I ain't got nothing, bro. I really don't have it. Like, no, we don't want to. Like, what are we talking about here? What are we talking about? First round picks and players for just one. That hurts my soul,
For a
bro.
player that you signed, and look, listen, make no mistake about it, me. You just got done talking about it. We both love Alex Caruso here, but
Hmm.
when you still look at it though, and the reality of it, like when the Bulls signed Alex Caruso, it was a still of a deal. With that, for you to be able to turn a player that you signed that already was looked at as a steal
Those are
and
close.
not be and lose that basically for, I can't say nothing. Josh Giddy is nothing. That wouldn't be fair,
But
but
it
like
could be nothing because he's
it
on the
could, because
last
he
year
could
of his
walk.
contract.
Yes, and he could walk at the end of the season. So,
Oh my
hey,
god.
being a Bulls fan is tough, bro. That's all I can say to
Chicago
that.
in general, man. And then we got to deal with the Chicago people on top of that. Like, I have to leave my house every day and go deal with Chicago people on top of being a Chicago sports fan, bro. It's rough. It's
Have
rough.
fun with that, Kev. But let's move off of that, off the Josh Giddy conversation, man, just to have a different conversation. So, unfortunately, the Orlando Magic team that I really do like, we've talked a lot about the Magic, and they've been able to really stay towards the top of that Eastern Conference after losing Paolo, like a couple of games into the season, then they turned around and they lost Franz, who was really helping them stay afloat. And this team has kept finding ways to win, even throughout all those injuries. They're still 5-5 in their last 10. They sit at 18-12, fourth in the Eastern Conference, considering they're missing their top two offensive players and the best player overall in Paolo. Now they lose Mo. Mo Wagner as well is now down, and he's out for the season with the torn ACL. And this is a guy who's averaging was getting close to a double-double for them, stepping up big time. This is a team that does at times lack some size and mobility, and what Mo's been able to be for them defensively and things like that has been huge for this team. At some point, you're just not going to be able to weather the storm. And let me ask you this: Is this the last? Is this the camel that's going to break, or the straw that's going to break the camel's back, in the sense that is this the last injury that the Orlando Magic just can't weather and stay in the top of that Eastern Conference?
I'm gonna say no, mainly because defense is contagious. And right now, their coach has them playing defense 1 through 15.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody
They're
go out
bought
there and
in,
play
100% bought into that
every,
system that they're running there.
everybody. And that wins you games. While Paolo is their best player, I'm going to say Mo is also their best player.
It's fair.
They got two best players on their team, and both of them down. And Paolo's going to be back sooner rather than later. Like, I think he's coming back within the next few weeks, if I'm not mistaken. His injury is about a little bit past halfway in terms of what they said was going to be. So I think that from a defensive standpoint, from the grit of now, if they lose Suggs, which who has been hobbled as well, then maybe that's the straw. But I just feel like with Paolo on the verge of coming back, with the rest of these guys out there playing as hard as they do, especially on the defensive end, they can still weather this storm. Now, will they still be, top 4? Maybe not. Maybe not. But they'll still be maybe top 6, and if not, a play-in team. I just don't see this precipitous top fall from grace because they lost Mo Wagner for the rest of the season. But it does hurt. Like, it really does hurt.
And I agree with you. I think that this team is still very much so going to be towards all they have to do, because Paolo, I think, is on pace to come back by the end of January, I think was the last thing that I heard. And if that's the case, like, even if they do fall, let's just say that they have this huge fall where they lose 60% of their games between now and Paolo comes back. This team is still so good defensively, and the East is so much so, everything's so close in the Eastern Conference that even with that, I think they'll be fine in this season. Like, because they've been able to stay afloat this long, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, they remind me of the Houston Rockets, but they're just in the Eastern Conference. They play defense. They got a lot of young players. They got a lot of length. They got people that don't know that they're not supposed to be as good as they are. I'm not too worried about them. And if they do fall from grace, be prepared to see them come out with a vengeance next season.
Yeah, here's the thing, that teams actually need to be worried, and the reason why I say that is that if the Orlando Magic do fall, and let's say they have to end up going through the play-in or whatever else, that means that a team in the first round that could be the 1 or the 2 seed would have to face a matchup that they wouldn't have had to face until the second, or maybe even the Eastern Conference Finals, to start off their playoff series. So these teams in the Eastern Conference better hope that the Orlando Magic don't fall too far, because if they do and they get health and they're healthy by the playoffs, I don't care where they are. They are so good defensively, and with Paolo and Franz back on that team, they're going to be so good in the way they're able to bring balance. Of course, they're going to need a period to get back acclimated and all that. But if that all happens, teams in the Eastern Conference need to be worried at that point, in my opinion.
If I'm not mistaken, they gave Cleveland all they could handle in the first round last season. And that was a young team that they had no business doing that to a team that was expected to go out there and sweep them. So, listen, man, I like the Orlando Magic. And part of the reason I like them is because they could be the Chicago Bulls. A lot of these players on the Orlando Magic are players that the Bulls would have drafted with minus
the
trade.
final
The
nail in that is Anthony Black actually starting to look like a good player now. Because like that's the
Yeah.
type. Like, could you imagine if we had, even if we would have kept that pick? And I know that it's a lot of what ifs if that happened. If we would have lost Alex Caruso, and even if we still did the Giddy trade, but we had Anthony Black and what he's been as a two-way player, you're good.
Yep. Yep. It is what it is. Such is life as a Chicago Bulls fan.
That's a fact. Any last thoughts, Kev, before we get up out of here, brother?
Nah, man, we coming up on the end of the year, starting to go into trade season. And then we'll have the All-Star break as well. So we're going to see what these teams are really about. There's a lot of teams that didn't play a lot this month because of the NBA Cup. Some teams only played 10, 11 games this month. January is going to be a lot of back-to-back, a lot of 3 games in 5 days. We're going to see what health looks like. We're going to see what grit looks like. We're going to see what teams that we expect to do well looks like. It's going to be fun. January is going to be a fun month for basketball.
Very much so. It's already been a really fun season. I know, like, I wasn't a big person on like the NBA Cup, but those Cup games were exciting, bro. Like, they were good, especially and then when you got into the knockout round, it got even better. So
yeah. Defense, bro. They were playing playoff defense.
That's a fact. These teams were carrying out there, man.
I do want to say one last thing. If the Lakers and LeBron played as poorly as Golden State played the other day against Memphis, we would not have been hearing the end of it, bro. Like, I've been sitting on that for a minute. I'm sure a lot of people have already said it. But, like, Curry had 2 points, bro, in an NBA basketball game. 2. Let LeBron go out there and score 2 points in the game and lose by 50. We would still be hearing about it, not just on social media, but on ESPN, Fox. Like, as much as I like Steph Curry, that dude gets a pass. He gets the ultimate pass for whatever reason. Nobody holds the candle, the microscope on him like they do with LeBron James, and I think that's just sad, to be 100. That's it, though. That's my last thought.
I mean, that's fair, and I think that actually could warrant a whole conversation in of itself, because there's a lot of truth to what you just said, and I think it's something that people don't talk enough about, if I'm being honest with you. But hey,
yeah, maybe the next episode.
The next one. But thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys are following the channel at NBA Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything basketball related, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.